Hello, Kingdom people. God bless you. Thanks for tuning in. I hope that you are having a blessed day. I hope that you are staying present, staying awake. God is always around us. I hope that you're living in love as Christ loved you and gave his life for you. So we are in the middle of a video series talking about Bart Ehrman's essay, What Do We Really Know About Jesus?, found in the December 10th edition of Newsweek magazine. I mentioned in one of the previous sessions, and I don't know, do you call them sessions? I feel like I'm a therapist if I call them sessions, but what else do you call them? They can't be classes, they're not a course, they're blogs, video blogs. One of our previous blogs? Okay, I'll go with that. For right now, I might change it later on, we'll see. But in one of the previous video blogs, I there responded to Bart's claim that the Gospels are not good, reliable sources of historical information. And I argued, in contrast to that we've got every reason to think that these documents could not be substantially legendary and they could not be substantially fabricated, that rather these documents are substantially anchored in history. Paul Eddy and I talk about that in our book, The Jesus Legend, if you want to go deeper into that issue. So now I'm going to be turning to talk about Bart's criticism of the infancy narratives in particular. He makes it a lot over the genealogies, the apparent conflicting genealogies of Matthew and Luke. And he argues that they're fabricated and that they are contradictory. Here's his quote. He says that these genealogies are given because both Matthew and Luke want to relate Jesus to the ancestral line of the Jewish patriarchs. So Matthew and Luke have provided genealogies that have been invented. They've been invented for that purpose, and as a result, they're necessarily at odds with each other. Is that true? Now, the thing is that this is old stuff. There's nothing new in this claim that these genealogies contradict each other. In fact, from the 2nd century on, the church has known about this apparent contradiction between these two genealogies and has responded to it. I mean, there's been at least 5 different responses that I know of throughout history. But here's, and some of them are plausible, some not. I'll talk more about that in the next blog or the next session, whatever you want to call it. But here's what's remarkable about Bart. He's got a gift. I got to hand it to him. He's able to take old, worn-out, tired, well-trodden issues that everybody knows about, and he can write these best-selling books on them by repackaging them and making it appear like he's hit upon some scandalous new discovery. It's really remarkable. Maybe the best case of this is his book, Misquoting Jesus, which I think is also his bestseller. Misquoting Jesus. I can't tell you how many people have written me or talked to me asking me about that book because it's just messed with a lot of people's heads. In this book, Bart cites the significant variations that you find in all the early manuscripts of the New Testament. And he cites them to argue that the early Christians doctored up the books, cooked the books, so to speak, for various reasons. The most important one being that he alleges that they made Jesus out to be divine, as though the earliest Christians weren't divine and didn't think Jesus was divine. Now, here's the thing. Anybody who's ever cracked a book in textual criticism knows about these variations in the early manuscripts of the New Testament. There's nothing new here. There's no new findings, there's no new facts, there's no new discoveries, no new anything. Bart's looking at the same set of facts that everybody else looks at, but he's one of the only ones who comes to this radical conclusion, that there's kind of a conspiracy going on. In fact, some of the world's most renowned textual critics have been very conservative Christians. Mike Holmes, he's a friend of mine, teaches at Bethel College. He's one of the world's top scholars on the early manuscripts of the New Testament and on textual criticism in general. He's written some books about it, but he's a conservative Christian. In fact, Bruce Metzger was considered the world's most renowned scholar on textual criticism, and he was at Bethel, at Princeton, excuse me, when Bart and I were there. I don't know if Bart studied under him or not, but he was the foremost scholar in the field, and he was a staunch conservative Christian. He knows looking at the same facts that Bart was looking at. For all I know, Bart learned it from him. But Bart draws these radical conclusions, and very few others share that perspective. So yes, there's a lot of variation in the early manuscripts of the New Testament, but no one's cooking the books. There's no one's doctoring things up. Now, there's a lot of objections that you could raise to Ehrman's perspective. I'll just share one. It's important to realize that the early church was birthed in what's called an orality culture. That's a culture where traditions are passed on orally, and writing plays a minor role, a culture of orality. And in that context, in any reciting of the tradition, what was called an oral performance, the person doing the reciting of the tradition, who was often referred to as a tradint, he was permitted to modify the tradition within certain parameters. He could modify it to clarify a point. He could modify it to fit the stories to the circumstances of his audience, or to address the issues that his audience is dealing with. That was normal. That was considered appropriate. And in orality cultures, that also applied to writings, because writings were considered sort of encoded oral performances. And so you find, for example, this is why the teachings of Jesus in the Gospels vary somewhat, because each Gospel is considered an example of an oral performance. And so, of course, you find variations. Each Gospel author rearranges the material and rewords the material to fit the needs of his audience, and that was considered totally acceptable in that context. So yes, there's a lot of variation. It's not surprising we find so much variation in the New Testament documents, but there's no conspiracy going on. All right, in the next session or the blog, whatever, I will argue that something similar is true for this well-known, well-trodden, old objection that the genealogies of Matthew and Luke contradict each other. Until then, God bless you. Keep your eyes on the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. See ya. Bye.